Okay, headline. Japanese company Softbank has signed an agreement to invest $2 billion in Intel for a 2% share of the company. 2%. 2% share of the company that will make it the sixth largest shareholder in the company. Meanwhile, Trump wants the U.S. to take a 10% stake in Intel. And yeah, this is the same president under the influence of Musk and Vivek who, at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, was talking about wanting to privatize the United States Post Office. Now, forget all the propaganda you've heard about how bad the post office is. You know, all the reasons we should want to privatize the post office. Forget all that for just a minute, but just erase that from your mind. Erase it from your mind. And understand, the United States Post Office is a gem. It's a diamond. It's a ruby. It's more than that. It holds a huge amount of real estate all over the country. A huge amount of real estate. And when Trump and Musk and Vivek were talking about privatizing the post office, they had dollar signs in their eyes. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. The oligarchs wanted one of the most precious gems of the United States, one of the wealthiest gems of the United States, robbed. Understand that? Okay. Now let's turn back the clock. Let's turn back the clock, baby. President Eisenhower signed the National Aeronautics and Space Act of 1958 into law on July 29th, creating, what did he create? Raise your hand if you know what he created. He created NASA, N-A-S-A, NASA. The agency opened for business on October 1st, 1958. Now, all kinds of businesses benefited from NASA. It was like this huge injection into the American economy. Fairchild Semiconductor. Noyce and Moore were pioneers in the integrated circuit technology and were among the founders of Fairchild Semiconductor. Before starting what? What would they later go and help start? What else would their little fingers be working on? Intel. Fairchild Semiconductor, founders of it, become the founders of Intel. NASA's role in integrated circuits. NASA's Apollo program relied heavily on integrated circuits, driving demand and innovation in the semiconductor industry. While Fairchild was involved in producing integrated circuits for Apollo, including guidance computer, it's important to differentiate between the company's work and the founder's individual employment history. In other words, they weren't all just about NASA, but NASA was there. NASA was part of it. And they were part of NASA. NASA's investment in and demand for integrated circuits, significantly stimulated the development of the technology and the semiconductor industry in general. So while Intel's founders were not directly affiliated with NASA, a lot of the companies that benefited with NASA were not directly affiliated. You know, back in those days, we still believed in the free enterprise system. We still believed that the private sector, if left untethered, unhindered, could do marvelous things. Even if part of those marvelous things was for the government. Intel Integrated in Electronics was founded on July 18th, 1968. 1968, that's how old the company is. It was founded by semiconductor pioneers Gordon Moore of Moore's Law and Robert Noyce, and is associated with the executive leadership and vision of Andrew Grove. Intel's first product, the 3101 bipolar SRAM, outperformed competitors' products despite the fact that SRAMs were hard to develop. And Intel was able to shrink that timeline. They got it done quick. The success and a strong signal about the company's capability. Now, NASA and Intel they're separate, but not so separate. Intel is currently involved with NASA developing high-performance computing HPC supercomputers. Intel is helping NASA to develop supercomputers. They're helping them develop space vehicles. They're helping them to develop AI for space exploration challenges. AI. They're helping NASA to develop AI. They're helping to develop STEM, education, and outreach. NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center and Intel collaborate on educational programs to inspire and prepare the next generation of scientists and engineers to tackle future AI technological challenges. These programs aim to promote STEM fields and increase student participation. They're working on on-demand manufacturing of electronics, ODME, in space. Manufacturing in space. Manufacturing in space. Now, I remember very well when Intel stock fell off the cliff. I was thinking about investing in it, and I kept putting it off and kept thinking it was dropping. I said, well, surely it's going to bounce. Surely it's going to bounce. Surely it's going to bounce. But no, it just fell off a cliff. Now, when you look at this chart and you think, okay, it fell off a cliff. Now, back at the time, people blamed, oh, AMD. You heard AMD all over the freaking place, like AMD was taking over the world. Now, when you look at this chart and you think of that propaganda, understand Intel chips are found in roughly 67 to 82% of computers. They are still the dominant player in the CPU market. Now, you may look at this chart and you may look at some of the stats on Intel, especially their revenue numbers, and you may say, well, Chuck, their revenue. They've been losing money. That may be what you say. And you say, well, that explains the chart. That fully explains the chart. Now, a lot of the problems at the post office, U.S. Post Office, were created intentionally. So that when the oligarchs came to want to rob the U.S. of the post office, the average brainwashed person out there that's been watching the news, listening to the radio, maybe listening to some influencers, oh, the post office is awful. It's so mismanaged. It's badly run. Good. Get rid of it. Without fully realizing the post office is a gem. It holds humongous wealth that the oligarchs want to rob. The oligarchs that are able to control our Congress to some degree and our president to some degree and get some really bad laws passed. Put the wrong person over to run the post office also. My opinion. That's just my opinion. Well, Intel also has been impacted by some really bad laws. The Biden administration expanded export controls, especially those restricting high-performance AI chips to China. That hurt Intel. The EU, that's practically under the thumb. I mean, basically they run the EU. The oligarchs run the EU. I mean, the oligarchs could actually drive the EU off a cliff. And the European people, so badly informed by their media, wouldn't even fully realize what's happening. I'm not saying this to put the European people down. The American people are just as brainwashed. We're all freaking brainwashed. We tend to believe what they want us to believe. We forget the government is bad. The oligarchy is bad. They're not our friend. The government is bad. The oligarchy is bad. They're not our friend. Now, I'm not saying this as a communist. I believe in the free enterprise system. I believe in small businesses. I believe in small businesses. I would rather that Intel be 10, 15 companies rather than one company. I don't want all that wealth put into one entity. That some criminals might decide, we might can get our hands on that, and look at all those patents. Yeah. What happened to Kodak? Go back and study Kodak. Go back and study what happened to Kodak, a great American company. It had all this wealth, all this intellectual property, all just bundled together, just waiting to be stolen. So the EU also put antitrust regulations in place to hurt Intel. The CHIPS Act, which supposedly was intended to help companies like Intel, actually probably did more harm than good. That's debatable. You might can prove me wrong on that. But I wanted Trump to be a good president. I wanted him to be a good president. I lean libertarian. I lean strongly libertarian. I believe less government is better government. I understand government is the enemy. Giant corporations tend to be the enemy, and yet that unfortunately includes Intel. Not because they're bad per se, but the people who get their tentacles, they're like this octopus that get their tentacles in these giant companies. The companies themselves aren't that bad. It's those octopuses, those monsters, those huge arms just waving about and just grabbing those companies and squeezing all the wealth out of those companies when they want to. I mean, they store wealth in the companies when they want to do that as well. So anyway, understand what Trump wants to do to Intel is not good any more than what he wanted to do to the U.S. Post Office. That wasn't good either. And understand I'm brainwashed just like the rest of you. I mean, you sit and watch the media enough, you look at things through their eyes. You see what they want you to see. You know what they want you to know or think you know. The United States is the richest nation on earth, but we've been being plundered. We've been being plundered. I'm not going to spell out who's responsible for that plundering. You got to figure it out yourself. Much thanks for watching and listening. I do appreciate it.